Alright, so I have a confession. I have a tool problem. For this episode, what I wanted to do is take a look at what tools are necessary to carry on a boat, and tools and spare parts, and I'll put that in the same category. Just extra stuff that I keep on my boat, and I probably keep way too much, I think. So it'd be interesting if somebody wants to throw something in the comments about what you carry. But I want to kind of go over what I'm carrying on my boat right now, and the main reason is because I have a couple different tool sets. I have tools that I keep at home, and I have tools that I keep here, and I tend to keep most of them on the boat because it seems to be where I use them more often than at home. So just take a look here. I got everything dug out of the compartments, and I keep everything back in those compartments behind the cushions, and I've got multiple boxes of stuff which I'll go through in a second. And then over on the other side I have a bunch of tools and things there as well. So let's take a look at everything that I keep on the boat. So one thing that has been that I really like having on the boat is this shop vac. It's the shop vac Micro, and if you do not have one of these and you have a boat, you must get one. This thing is awesome. It's small, it fits in tight spaces, and it's great having a vacuum cleaner on the boat, so you can vacuum things up if you're cutting or drilling things, or even just dirt or whatever. This particular one, I had a couple. I had one on my old boat that I brought with me. This was on the boat when I got it, and someone did something really cool to this one. Is they took this piece of plastic that looks like a lid for something, and they cut it and drilled into or attached it to the bottom of the shop vac so it doesn't flip over, which I think is a really cool idea. So that is a really cool tool to have. Now I also keep a lot of spare parts for things on the boat. So these two things here, I've got some extra hose clamps, a lot of stainless steel screws, rings, split rings that you need for all sorts of things, extra small cotter pins and things like that, other different size cotter pins. And also some electrical things I have in here. So for making connections, some more stainless steel stuff, some wax for threads and sewing things, which that actually should be in my sewing kit. So I'll move that to the sewing kit. That's the other thing I want to do, is organize some of this stuff. Now over on this side, I've got a bunch of spare part type things. Some of this is just parts I've taken off the boat, and I keep as much of it as I can, like all the good parts, in case something else breaks. And then here, these are all my engine parts. So I got lots of different things like fuel filters. A lot of this stuff came with the boat, like a radiator cap, copper washers, which are good they're used for the fuel lines and stuff like that. And a couple extra impellers, including this one, which I've never seen before, is a run-dry impeller, and it's supposed to last a lot longer than regular rubber impellers. So I don't know how well those work, but at some point I may pop that one in there when I need to replace the current impeller. This is a good thing to have. It's for a toilet, but it's a wax ring. So the wax, like if you have something that's leaking or something like that, this wax is really sticky and will stick onto it, and you can use it to plug cracks and stuff like that up if they're leaking. I got stuff in there, like this is a pump for pumping fluids, a turkey baster also for fluids for like the battery or sucking fluids out of small spaces, some funnel type stuff. Can't have enough zip ties, some pieces of wood to fix things, some other things that I've taken off the boat. Back there, my suction cup and scrubby for cleaning the hull. I've got some extra oil for the outboard over here. I've got back in the corner there oil for the engine, some bleach that I use for cleaning, and then for my oil pump to suck the oil out of the engine for oil changes. And then of course here I've got some butyl tape, which I use for sealing things on the deck. And then over here, these two things have more parts and stuff in there. So I gotta actually have a couple of these. This is some for electrical stuff. This is a soldering iron that is powered by butane, and so you can use it without having to plug it in. And then there's some extra wiring, some extra wires, some more zip ties, which I could probably consolidate zip ties, oops, and spill them all over while I'm at it. But put some zip ties in all in one spot, because right now I've got stuff like everywhere, and I need to organize this better. So a lot of the boxes that I have here were just things that started on our first boat, and I've slowly added things to them and moved them onto other boats. But originally I had the intent of having like electrical box, spare parts box, and stuff like that, but it's kind of grown since then. This other one over here has some stuff in there. These are parts for the dripless shaft seal. This stuff here, I'm going to take this out of here actually. This is good tape to have, the rescue tape. It's silicone tape that stretches and it adheres to itself, so it's good for leaking things. This stuff here is super glue tape, so different types of tapes, things like that are handy to have. If something breaks, you can at least tape it together temporarily. That there is like where I have all the different fluids and some stuff. I have this is actually the filter for the Raycor, which I could probably put that over here with engine stuff. And then all the different fluids that I have. So this grease here is for the propeller. It's a feathering type propeller, so it needs some grease, some wire that could go with the wire section. Titebond glue. This is Titebond's waterproof glue. Waterproof glue, wood glue, which is handy to have on a boat. This stuff is for lubricating the through hulls, and it's a PTFE lubricant that you can use for all sorts of stuff apparently. Hatch slides, hinges, track car slides, anything that moves. It doesn't drip, it's like a thick, greasy type thing. And then some other stuff in here. Life seal caulk for in case I need that. Form a gasket, wood filler, whip end, PB blaster, of course, and WD-40. And then this stuff I use for it's a dry lubricant I use for slides for the sails. This box here I use for all the different manuals and stuff on the boat. And a lot of these came with the boat, but they had them in like 3-ring binders. But I got this thing instead, which is pretty handy. It's got, like, I keep all the manuals, and it's all organized by alphabetically by what it is. So like the seacocks, the shaft seal, the hatch hinges have their own thing, the fuel pump, battery charger, all that stuff has a manual, and all that stuff's in here. There's the Yanmar manual is in here, and as well as the paperwork for the boat I think is in here as well. So all that stuff goes in there, and it's somewhat waterproof. At least it keeps it from getting wet. I also have some spare hoses. These are like offcuts from things that I've replaced, but these are just shorter pieces. I have longer pieces that I keep in the bilge. So there's everything back where it came out of. So I really use that whole side for stuff, which seems to me like that's probably too much stuff. I should either find someplace else to put it, but it seems like I use all that stuff a lot. So, or maybe like a different way to put it, or different containers to put it in that might take up less space. Like that thing right there that holds the fluids. That thing takes up a lot of space, and it doesn't, you know, the container's bigger than all the stuff that's in it. But that's what it looks like all stowed away. So tools, this is my bigger problem, and mainly because I have like a ton of tools, and I keep some at home that I use and some that I keep at on the boat all the time. So this bag right here, this is one I always take with me when I come to the boat, because this is stuff that I use a lot at home. So I have my cordless drill, some bits, and I don't want to go buy a drill specifically for the boat, at least not yet. So that's why I bring that back and forth. Some other extra bits in there. My socks are in there because I took them off. And a tape measure, which I could buy another one for the boat, but I use that one both places. Some screw bits. And this screwdriver I really like because it's one of the ones that changes. different tips and stuff in there. It's a 10-in-1, so I really like that one, so I carry it back and forth with me. Use it at home a lot. This is for bits to go into the drill. And of course I got vice grips, which I keep pairs of vice grips on the boat as well, but this is my nice pair of vice grips. The channel locks, a crescent wrench, or adjustable wrench actually, or as I saw this referred to, a Swedish nut lathe, which I think is the perfect name for it, because that's what it does. Rounds off nuts faster than anything else. Very small screwdrivers, Phillips and slotted, wire cutters, and utility knives, which I have those all over the place. And that's what I take in my kit that I go back and forth with. Okay, so then this next one, this is stuff that I leave on the boat most of the time. And I got this tool roll, which I like. I really like a tool roll. The one disadvantage is you do have to open it up every time, like this, every time you use it. But this is one that I keep on the boat exclusively. And what I've got in here is some small files over here. A small file, some tweezers. I got like a little picking tool to pick stuff, scrape things, pick stuff out of there. A couple small wrenches that just happen to be extra wrenches that I had. Some crimpers for wire terminals. A pair of vice grips and another nice pair of vice grips. Plus I have this pair here, which is Duralast. It's not the best brand. They're a little loose and crappy, but they have kind of like almost a needle nose thing going on there. A couple of screwdrivers, a couple again of more small screwdrivers, and then a couple more adjustable wrenches here. And then inside these pockets on the end, I usually have like, oh, these are really good to have, angled screwdrivers, and then I have some extra Allen wrenches in there. These things here are tips for my snap ring pliers. So that's what this is right here. Snap ring pliers, which are handy to have to take snap rings off. And it's got all the different tips to take inside rings, outside rings, you name it, it'll take them off. And believe me, once you've tried to take a couple snap rings off without that tool, that becomes invaluable. So that gets rolled up. Now this is my big bag here. I keep most of the time on the boat. What I usually keep in there, I don't usually keep these in there, but I was using these for the upholstery project, so I had them in there. So I usually keep these at home, and I'll probably take these home with me. This thing I keep on the boat most of the time is my socket set. And I've got it's metric and standard in here. A couple of different drivers and different size sockets. So I like this thing a lot, but I also like to use it at home. So it's one of those. I have another smaller set at home, but this one, because it has both metric and standard, it's nice. The one I have at home is all metric. And then I keep these two rolls, and these are both wrenches. They're full wrench sets. So one of them is metric and one of them is standard. So there's that. This one is the same thing, but in standard. And then I put on there on the outside, I wrote that is metric, so I know which one to unroll. This thing here, ooh, this one here, this multimeter, I've had this thing for years. And one of my followers, Tyson, may or may not remember, but Tyson gave this thing to me like years ago. And I still keep it. It's an automotive multimeter, and it's different. It's kind of like on its last leg, because there's some things that it doesn't do anymore. Like it doesn't do, I think, continuity or something. Something doesn't work on it. I forget what it was, but this is good to have for doing electrical stuff. This thing, I love this. This is fun to play with. I just picked this up on eBay a year or so ago. And it's a infrared temperature thing, so that's good because you can see what the temperature of the engine is, stuff like that. Now this bag here is my big bag of tools that I like to have at home, but I bring it to the boat because I end up using it more on the boat. But it sometimes goes back and forth. So some good things I have in here, of course, all the different screwdrivers, another utility knife there. This little toolkit came with the outboard, so it's all the tools for the outboard in there. In here I keep this is where I have all my big sockets for bigger things on the boat. And I think this one may have come with the boat, because there were a bunch of sockets that were already on the boat, and I think this was it. I just bought the holders for them so I could put them in my box. A really long tape measure. This one is 100 feet, which is nice to have to measure, especially on a boat for like lines and stuff like that. And a really big socket driver, which is a 1/2 inch, and it fits some of those big sockets there. And then these two things are nice to have. They're for pulling hoses off of their stubs. I got a small pipe wrench in here. I got a mallet in here. Also, some larger channel locks. And these are real channel locks. Larger channel locks. Oil filter wrench. And this is the one, I had a couple of these. This is the only one that fits the small filter on the Yanmar. So it's one that you use a socket wrench, socket driver to take off. It's a Craftsman. It's pretty handy to have. It's the only one that gets small enough. I had the regular band type. I think I have a couple of those, but they wouldn't get small enough to hold the Yanmar filter, but that one does. Another thing in here, I got a couple files, hacksaw, some tin snips, some needle nose pliers, and this thing here is another pair of pliers. I got this recently, and it's for extracting like screws that have broken off. It's got like a special tip that grabs the screws, the head of a screw if it's been stripped, and it's a pretty nice pair of pliers. But that's that box there, or this tool bag. I like the tool bag because they're easier to fit into tight spaces, so I usually keep that over here. And then this one here, I got some line that I use, like that's just some extra line that I use for pulling lines through other places. This is another one of those torches, soldering torches that uses butane. Another thing I keep in here, those are handy to have, or bolt cutters, handy to have for, especially like with all the lines on the boat, or I should say the standing rigging, the cables, that you could cut those in an emergency if you needed to. That's what those are for. This thing here, it's actually the box that's supposed to have the Yanmar tools in it, but it doesn't. It has some of the winch parts in there, and winch, of course, spelled wrong. Whoever put that on there. And some painter's tape, which is always good to have. Shop towels, which are good to have. Sandpaper. So this is my fiberglass kit, because I've had to do some fiberglass patching and stuff on the hull. Some rubber gloves. These things are for plugging up through hulls. If you had a broken through hull, you could take these and plug them through. I actually have one that's tied by every through hull on the boat, and a couple extra ones in here. And there's a couple pieces of extra hose in there as well. And I should probably put all that in the same spot. But those are the tools that I have. Another interesting little thing here I found, I think this may have come on the boat, but it's another way to carry tools, which I'm experimenting with here. It's like a boat specific type tool bag, and it's like a bucket type, a cloth bucket. That would be good for like if you're carrying tools like up on the mast, you're going up the mast or whatever. So I'm debating taking some of these things and putting them in this bag, so I can take this bag and maybe leave it at home. I also have in here some other tools. This is for splicing braided lines. So it's a little, I actually have two of these, one that came with the boat and one that I had previously. So a couple of those. And then I have my sewing kit I keep over here. And I've got in here some sail tape for rips to repair the sail. And then this thing here, this is my sewing kit for repairs. And I've got a sewing palm. This thing is one of those, I don't know what you call them, but they allow you to do that stitch that a sewing machine does, but it allows you to do it by hand. And then I got a selection of needles there, some different types of waxed thread, and stuff like that. These are the different things that go in the slide for the mast. And then I put my wax in there so I have it there. And then that's my, oh, I know what this thing is called. It's right there. It's called a speedy stitcher. Sewing awl is what that is. So it works the same way that a sewing machine does. It has like a bobbin inside here. And then, but you do it by hand for like sails, repairing sails and stuff like that, that you couldn't do with a regular stitch. So that's where that stuff all gets stowed in there. And it fits in there. On this other side here, there's not a lot of room to store stuff in there. I actually have another one of those bags, I think. I have two. This one is more just a bag. And it has the bosun's chair for going up the mast in it, inside there. And there's no compartments or anything. But that's what it's for, is for going up the mast. And then some other dry bags in there. This one that gets smaller, I don't think I have anything in there. Yeah, that little thing there is for the spinnaker that's down there, but that's pretty empty. And then there it is, all closed up. Okay, so those are all the tools that I keep on the boat, and supplies. Most of the tools and supplies I think I've covered. But to be interesting, if anybody's watching this, to share what tools you carry on your boat, what supplies that you carry on your boat, how you store them is the big thing, because that's, I think, my biggest thing is I'm taking up way too much space for all that. Because realistically, you know, our boat, we're in the Chesapeake Bay all the time, and if something breaks where I can't fix it, I mean, we're, you know, a dinghy ride to shore is not that bad. So I don't know if I need to keep all that stuff on the boat, but there's always projects to do, so it's good to have the tools even at the dock here, so you can work on projects. Okay, so here I am in the garage at home to look at some tools that I have at home that I've kind of had back and forth between the boat and home, and just for whatever reason decided to keep here at home. I don't use them as much on the boat and only have to bring them occasionally to the boat. First I have this thing here, which is, this is like a great toolbox if you've never seen these before. I think this brand is Bucket Boss is the brand, but it's a tool thing that fits over a regular 5-gallon bucket, and it's great because it's got lots of different compartments to put stuff in, and you can kind of see exactly where they go. But in terms of boat things that I have here, first thing, this thing here is called normally a spud wrench, or it has some other names like that. But this is a really great tool if you have a regular shaft seal that requires you to loosen these these nuts that go on the end of it, that are really large, hard, and difficult to find something that fits it. These are really good because they fit those shaft seals. I have a dripless that doesn't require a tool like this, but I had this for my previous boat that did have a regular shaft seal on it. Scrapers are always good. I have a couple of scrapers that I use. You can see this one still has bottom paint on it for scraping bottom paint off the boat. Here, this is the toolbox I keep at home, which right now really just has like a bunch of extra stuff in it. But what I have in here, a couple of really large sockets that on my last boat I used. This one was big enough for the bolts, the keel bolts. So something like that, if you have something that's a specific type of, takes a specific bolt, especially a large one like this, then it's good to make sure that you have a socket like that on the boat. My current boat doesn't have keel bolts, so I don't need to keep this on the boat. Another thing, I think I have a couple spots on the boat, like I have one of those propellers, the self-feathering propellers, that has a couple of grease nipples on it, so this is good. A grease gun is good for that. But I only need this on the boat, or when I take the boat out of the water, so I don't need to keep it on the boat. A torque wrench, I've had this one forever, but this was good for the keel bolts on my old boat because you had to set it to a certain torque. When it's good to have for any kind of engine, that you have the right
the right torque on your bolts, so it's good to have a torque wrench. This also, I'd like to keep this. This is something that's handy to have on a boat if you have a vise to hold something in. And if I could mount this to a board or something, I've been considering doing that. Would be good to have on the boat. But it's something that I really don't need for, you know, the kind of work that I'm doing now. Some power tools that are good to have is this thing here. If you have a boat, you gotta get an oscillating tool. So this is one. Right now I have the sanding attachment on here. This is a Velcro pad, and you can stick sandpaper on there. It's really good as a sander. It's really good to cut through things, especially in tight spaces. So boats are full of tight spaces, so definitely, you know, if you have a boat and you work on it a lot, you should have an oscillating tool because they're super valuable for that kind of thing. This little sander, I picked this up, I think, at West Marine, like on discount. It's a Bosch sander that has the vacuum port on it, which is nice. And you can see this is all blue because last time I used it was sanding the bottom paint on the boat, which in a pinch works. It's probably not the best thing to use for sanding bottom paint, but it did the job. And I could hook this up to my shop vac, which I have a large, super large shop vac back there that I use for that. Of course, you know, if you're sanding your own bottom, you have to, you know, have some sort of filtration system to keep the dust out of your lungs. So this is what I used. It's a regular little 3M mask that has different cartridge filters that you can replace for different things depending on what you're doing. This one here I think is the one for dust, but you can also get ones if you're mixing up epoxy or other like toxic things like that. You can get filters for that as well. So that's all I've got for this week. A couple other projects that I have coming up probably relatively soon. I'm going to be replacing our chart plotter GPS that we have on the boat. We have an old Garmin GPS map, I think it is the version, and I'm looking at buying a new one to replace that because the current one is so old that you can't replace the maps on, you can't update the maps with it. So I'm going to get a new one. And then the other thing, I came down today also to measure for some solar panels. So I'm going to look at trying to get solar panels on here so we can at least start charging the battery when we're on anchor or at anchor. Tomorrow we are hopefully going to come down and do some sailing, although the wind doesn't look good. The temperature looks good, so it's going to be in the 70s tomorrow, but the winds I think are supposed to be light. So we will get out and at least try to get the sails up and sail around, and maybe I'll put some video of that up right now.